it. Under ordinary circumstances, the Bulldogs, I'm sure, would have been top of the agenda. The ongoing examination of which the coach, Brendan McCartney, fronted up today.
They're frustrated. You go through different emotions after a loss.
I look at their list and they're similar to Melbourne.
The scoreboard's the scoreboard, and the ladder, and your wins and losses and percentage and points for and against reflect how you're playing.
I think Western Bulldogs are in a worse position than Melbourne.
I think they're getting to the stage. No, they're at the stage where they want to perform better. We all are. We're disappointed with our results.
They're getting to a stage, and they'd hate it, but there's not that much interest in them.
Young players at times have lapses in games where they disappear. And
I'm staggered at where they're at the present time.
we didn't have a great 5 minutes as a player group, and it was really costly. And we understand what happened in that little patch, but it probably shouldn't have been as catastrophic, because we should have been able to play much better in the first half and get more opportunities.
I do feel that they are in for a world of pain.
Never shy away from confronting the reality of where we're at, but we have no loss of vision where we're going.
So the certainty remains in the mind of Brendan McCartney. Catastrophic lapses, he calls it. It's not that they're uncompetitive, it's they're patchy.
Oh, they're extremely patchy. When they're patchy, mate, they stink it up. We spoke about with Bob Murphy last night. The third quarter last week, they were made to look inept. They couldn't get their hands on the ball, and they couldn't stop the Gold Coast Suns. I think they kicked 7 goals. I mean, that's a powerful quarter of football. Powerful. And the Dogs,
You'll be buying a slab for everybody again as the phone goes.
Oh, that's 2. That's 2. Let me swear jar. It's very expensive coming in.
So you hold the line because it's what they believe in.
Yeah.
The only way to put a stop to it is to get a win. And then, as we spoke about on Monday, you go back to, we'll see you at the back third of the year.
Yeah.
A real measure then.
Yeah, it is. There'll be significant changes by then, because he's dealing with, again, as Murph, I think Murph said it, the senior players are playing pretty good footy, but they've got to get experience in. I mean, Brendan McCartney will have to make some, I reckon, difficult decisions with selection. He really will.
Where can they get the pressure valve release here?
Oh, sorry to cut you off, but they could win the next 2, and they could lose the next 2. That's where they are. I will probably pick St Kilda. I probably will. In Darwin, toss up maybe, but they need 2 wins. We all know that, and we'd like to see them have 2 wins, because we don't want to see anyone getting kicked to death. No one likes that. But the fact of the matter is, they're in a big transitional period. Do you think they can beat St Kilda?
I'd give them a hope. I'd probably, with you, conservatively would pick the Saints, but you'd give them some hope.
What's Kingy's thoughts? Do you know?
He's going to lay out the blueprint for a rebuild and measure the Bulldogs against what he would regard as the key steps. I think he views it quite favourably. We'll bring him in and find out shortly.
Yeah, it was pretty rough. Yep. You know you'll get through these times, but you lean on each other, and you've got to show the way the best way you can. And the very best way is, the next game, but there's pieces of that during the week. After the loss, you know you're going to get smashed. We've been around long enough. I fully support where the club is headed, but I'm still buoyed by the fact that when we do follow instruction, we go shoulder to shoulder with good sides. We really push them all the way, but we can't do it for long enough. Yes, that part of it's gone for me, that I won't get the chance to do that, but the opportunity that's still there to play AFL footy every game, every day is still very precious to me. Every moment I'm on the list of the Bulldogs is still very precious.
So Bob Murphy laid it out for us last night, the way things are. David King, Mark McClure, welcome.
Hi, King, sellers.
Well, let's start with the Bulldogs and the overall picture. And we asked you to undertake the the long-term rebuild, how it happens, what's necessary, and how they measure up against it?
Well, I think the first port of call was the player salaries and stripping back the cap and getting that back to somewhere. It used to be 92.5% you had to pay. That was the bare minimum. I think it's around 95 now. That's the first step, is to cut that back and then place that money where you see fit. Now, some clubs put that on the bottom line if they're in some financial trouble at the time. Some clubs put that into recruitment or development. Or you got something there?
Yeah, Richmond. They cut it. 2009, they cut it right back.
Absolutely.
Saved $1 million and directed it into their development and recruiting.
And it helps you keeping players too. It helps you keep your stars like the Cochin, the Lidio types you're talking about when their money rises. That's the first point for me. And it has to be done to give you a period of sustained success. So you can rebuild through the draft. Now, I'm not saying go wholly and solely and getting kids, but the people you bring in, those mature age recruits that you bring in, have to be a money ball type approach. They have to be younger players that can come in and allow you then to build a base around these players. And they can be from the Sandful, the Waffle, wherever. And we've seen, secondary, third or tertiary opportunities given to players have come in and done really well. Richmond have reaped the benefits of some of those players. Brett Goods more recently at the Dogs just to hold up. That money goes on, as we said there, on those four portions there. The effects of that are seen 3 or 4 years down the track. So if you decide to spend your money now on players like a Dawes or a Clark at Melbourne, you cut short your ability to put on 2 or 3 staff members in development or extra coaches or an area of the club. You are short in another area. You just don't have the money to keep paying that in all areas. And I think that inevitably it affects you. The Dogs have done that. The Dogs allowed Brian Lake to go last year.
And that's the losing stars part of it.
It's not necessarily losing stars. The player has to come to you and say, look, I'm not going anywhere here. I've got an opportunity and I've been offered X amount to move on. Now, Port Adelaide made that decision not to match the money that was given to those free agents, and they allowed them to leave, knowing that they were maybe going to take a step back. They could have matched those offers, but they've chosen to spend that money elsewhere. Lake, we've just spoken about, and maybe Goddard was the same sort of situation. They offered him something they could refuse. I just think it's common sense and it's good, smart business strategy to allow yourself to build again and come back up as a group with a good block, a good base of 20 players across a 4 or 5 year age group that come through and give you that big rebuild. Geelong have done it fantastically and haven't had to dip at all. Sydney the same. But I think the clubs that we're talking about, have seen the way Hawthorn have done it, and particularly the way Richmond have done it over the last couple of years. If you waver from it, there's a price you pay. And I don't think the Dogs have done that.
I think there's another side to it too. There's some standards need to be set by clubs. And some clubs don't set a high enough standard. You're actually taught by your peers. And your peers teach you more than your coaches, I reckon, and your peers pass it on to the next generation. Unfortunately, I'm not certain whether this is occurring at the Doggies or whether it occurred too far back that these guys aren't going hard enough. There's a bit of pride. You need to have some pride in your performance and continue to do so. Their fitness levels, they drop off every second half. They get killed, whether it's a fitness level or whether it's not. But I go back to one bloke, Brian Lake. They talked about him before. He left the footy club and went to another club. They allowed him to play at the Doggies 6, 7, 8 kilos overweight for 10 years. So what standards are they actually setting? He goes to Hawthorn. They make him strip 9 kilos, 8 or 9 kilos off first day, put him in the seconds for 2 or 3 weeks to run him. He never played in the seconds at the Doggies, ever. So what standards does this club have when it actually sets up their next generation of football? I think they need to address it, and address it very, very hard, because it is, at the moment, they're actually in a rebuild phase. And I think the senior players look like, we're in a rebuild phase.
They are in a rebuild phase.
Yeah, but your brain can't think that way.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. I look at Cross and Boyd and the work ethic. I mean, I know the standards there's a lot of standards you're trying to set, Kingy, aren't you, in a game of footy? Yeah. I think the work ethic and the professionalism of a lot of guys at the Dogs is really, really strong.
Yeah, but some of those guys get games week after week after week with not doing a lot.
Well, who? I know this is an easy thing for me to say, but it's also easy for you to say. Who are you talking about here?
How many tackles has Jan Syracuse had in the last few weeks?
I don't know. Well, obviously you might know because you put the name.
That's up to him to talk about that and think about those sorts of things. Robert Murphy does some flashy things every now and then, but does he do a lot other than that? He's very classy. Robbie's a very classy player. I really like him. He's a good fella. But he doesn't do enough in a lot of games. He has his 10 or 12, maybe 13 kicks max. Plays on a half-back flank. He gets more because that's how it works. But up forward, two or three flashy goals, fantastic. How many tackles does he have as a mobile forward? And it's setting a standard in other areas and actually getting the ball. That's the key that I see.
See, I think
that makes a difference.
Yeah, it does. But again, you're looking at your shoes rather than looking at the horizon. I think you have to look forward. Whenever you rebuild, all the decisions you're making are not for today. So it sounds ridiculous, but you can't be consumed by 5 bad minutes of footy here, or a bad quarter there, or an 8-goal loss as opposed to a 4-goal loss, or qualifying everything along the way. You have to say, these are the decisions we're making that are probably going to hurt us this week and next week and the week after, but in 2 years' time we're going to reap enormous benefits. Playing young kids does that to you.
Do you think Brendan McCartney has got some really difficult decisions to be made on the senior players, and do they have to be made sooner, like in the next 4 weeks, or later in the next 8 weeks?
Biggest decision he's got is Adam Cooney, and only Cooney can decide ultimately whether he leaves or stays. Cooney wants to be a one-club player. He's said that before, and that's fine. He's 27 years of age. There's still some really good footy in Adam Cooney's package, and I think that he maybe, let's call it 40 games. There's a club on the verge of winning a flag that could say, let's go and get this guy. Now, the Dogs are not going to be able to pay him what he's worth. He'll get unders. So will Murphy and all these players you're talking about, because that's just the system now. We're not going to have success, you get unders. But this guy has some currency. Now, a club may say to the Bulldogs, we'll give you a second-round pick for him, a pick 20 for him. Now, they are nearly obligated to take it. That's an awkward one to let that player go. But if Cooney thinks he can go and win a flag somewhere else that he's chased for years of his career and hasn't got, he's had personal glory, but no team success just yet. It may be great for him, and it may be great for the Bulldogs. And that's how I think these things unfold.
I had to stop Jared then from launching at Mark McClure as he had a go at Bob Murphy.
I could see that. He is his love child. But
I want to
ask you one question.
Yeah.
We should ask Brian Lake the difference between the two clubs and see what he says about standards.
Yeah.
It'd be very, very interesting.
You've had long-term criticisms about the standards of the Bulldogs,
I have,
which
yeah.
I wouldn't quibble too much with. But when you've spoken to Brendan McCartney...
I love Brendan McCartney.
You can hear it in him, can't you?
I can hear it in him.
This is only, 8 games into his second season.
But I also sit here and listen sometimes. Robbie's on our show because he's here, right? So, and I listen to him and he says the same things. Oh, we almost get it. We're not far away from getting it. They've had 18 months at it. How long does it take to get it?
But what's he supposed to say, Sellers?
I don't know. Get harder. Get tougher. This is a brutal business. This is...
but they play a tough brand of football, don't they?
Hang on, Robert. They are the leaders of this football club. Jan Syracuse and Murphy, Boyd, Cross, Cooney, Minson, whoever keeps coming. They're the leaders. What do they say? They just say, OK, we'll go back next week and have another go? You've got to draw a line somewhere and say, hey, listen, we're not going to cross this line until we have an absolute 100% from everybody, and it's got to start with the top. Can't just start with the kids. I'm not certain that they're giving everything they've got.
Your thoughts on
There's
Bob?
more.
Your thoughts on his comment on Bob Murphy?
On Bob? Look, they're in a tough position mentally, I get that, but I don't cut them any slack. They're AFL footballers being paid to perform week in, week out. Now, we can make excuses, it's tough for them at the moment. Forget that it's tough for them at the moment. They're doing exactly what millions of people in Australia would love to be doing. So it's tough for them at the moment, it doesn't wash with me. They are paid to perform like every other player. Now, there's times when they do and there's times when they don't. A lot of these players are past their best. So I'm not expecting Rob Murphy to come out and have 30 possessions and kick 5. But if he does, it'll be rap for him, right? But he's not going to do that. He's got to show the way. He's got to. I heard Jackson McRae talk through the week about Rob Murphy was the greatest influence on him that he's had at the Dogs. That's fantastic. Huge tick for Rob, huge tick for the kid to actually have the ability to say that and converse in that way. And that's a great tick, I think, for the club. That's their role now, but they've still got to perform. They can't carry these guys in any way, shape or form because they are showing the way. They have to show it through actions, not just words. And I think that if they can't do that, then they're out. But I don't necessarily say all of them are there. But they know where they're at.
They're all differing in their performance and their effort, and that's the problem.
Their performance, yes, not their effort. Not their effort.
No, their effort's okay. I understand that. They're trying hard. And that game we saw them against Brisbane, they were sensational. They were terrific. And we want to see more of that. Why haven't we seen more of